What's everybody? Welcome to today's show on Grand Torino with me, your host, Quirtan Krokta. I'll talk to you today roughly about a Twitter hashtag that's kicking around at the moment, 19th, today being the Friday the 19th, 2018 here in Dublin, Ireland. Local weather outside it's pretty gloomy and pretty murky. Release the Memo is trending on Twitter at the moment. And I'll go back quickly to the last video with the Q phenomena and the coming storm and what it entailed. I said I think I know that Julian Assange was going to be around. It didn't transpire. I do know that the sealed indictments are about to be unveiled and are slowly. The first ones have been unveiled towards Uranium One, which is part of the Hillary Clinton investigations that have been reopened. But there's a timeline that you need to be aware of, that these proceedings and these prosecutions have actually been in place and put in place by a man named Michael Horowitz, who's an Inspector General of the American government. He's the head of Office of Inspector General, which was created in 1978. It's a multi-departmental organization. Essentially, I think there's over 80 according to some facts put out there. Essentially, they are the internal affairs officers of the government. And they've been working diligently behind the scenes, have always been carrying on at the levels of GS14 and GS15. These are operatives in the upper echelons that are just a step down or a step below political appointments. These appointments are put in place to monitor or essentially push the political agenda and keep an eye on the various operations. So what is Release the Memo? Well, apparently Comey, the former FBI director, wrote a memo that's going to corroborate incriminating evidence against him that he was using an illegal FISA warrant. FISA warrants will become more prevalent in the discourse as the media saturates with more and more disinformation, but I'm trying to give you a heads up on the timelines. Now this timeline, the information from this came from Crowdsource the Truth, the OIG report on YouTube. Jason Bateman thoroughly recommended. It's about an hour and a half long, and there's a whistleblower who sets out very compelling evidence as towards how this timeline comes in place and how it affects what's going on at the moment. I'd like to thank you for your comments and for the likes, and for all the new subscribers. Welcome aboard. Thanks very much for your support. I'm really enjoying this. This is kind of grabbing my attention, looking over at the States and seeing what's going on over there. It's fascinating stuff. Just want to make you aware that I will be attending the IR Exit show on the RDS on February the 3rd, where there'll be some speakers speaking there, and I will probably do a report after the fact if I don't do any video recordings there. And I'd also like to draw your attention to a March for Life that's happening on February the 10th here in Dublin, and I ask you to come out and support if you can, or if you feel that way inclined. Or let's bring out the other side of the conversation. So I got a bit sidetracked there. The multi-departments, anyway, the OIG concentrates specifically within the realms of government on fraud, waste and abuse. They were muted by Eric Holder, on Obama's Adjutant General, in 2012. This happened after apparently being caught with their pants down, essentially, on the Fast and Furious scandal. That we kind of just drifted through the preamble over here. We didn't hear too much about it, but it was a CIA gun running operation that was transporting tagged guns. These were supposed to be geolocated guns that were given to cartels, and then they would then be able to track cartel members. Apparently one of the officers was killed by these guns, and they weren't able to establish how they weren't able to track it. That's a side story. The side story being that the government the Americans at the time gave the cartels the guns, and the cartel then shipped them off to Hamas. That's the rumour circulating, but I just thought I'd throw that out there. So what happened in 2012? 2012, the scandal became known, and it was drawing suspicion towards the Obama administration. And Eric Holder changed the rules of provision for the OIG, essentially muting them. At that time, he appointed Michael Horowitz, who was not necessarily an Obama appointee, but he was put in place that he was just the number one pick on the list at the time. They were going through their filling their offices of space. They thought they could not essentially control him. They didn't know too much about him, but as a backup, they also changed the rules of provision so that the investigators couldn't investigate the government or investigate them through the Fast and the Furious. This is all going to lead back there eventually, which is could lead on to number 44, our friend Barry being indicted in some sort of act. So what happened from 2012? Well, according to the crowd-sourced source whistleblower who explains the timeline, there was indeed a challenging time for Michael Horowitz to convince Congress to give back the powers to the OIG office. And he did it through drawing attention to the waste of $67 billion that the Obama administration was accruing. But that wasn't his long-term hand, that was just an opening gambit to try and draw the attention of Congress to the muting of Eric Holder's muting of the Office of Inspector Generals. And essentially they couldn't do anything. But in the meantime, people are gathering evidence and things are being recorded. Everything is known. So from 2012, let's just say we time jump to 2014, and essentially Michael Horowitz got Congress to pass the Empowerment Act, the Office of General's Empowerment Act, essentially turning the Office of Inspector General back on. That was done through a Republican senator, through the Congressman Isa Darrell, I believe his name is, and he sponsored the bill, the Inspector General's Empowerment Act, HR 5492. You can circulate that and Google that for your reference, or you can look at the 2014 Empowerment Act when it was switched on, and it was done around the time of the 113th Congress in December. At this stage, Obama had more or less lost the Senate, and both parties came together under the guise of wasteful spending in the government and gave the OIG their powers back. Boom, as the source says, that was a game changer. It was a game changer in the sense that there was no media coverage of it. This draws back towards the Trump's fake news awards and the culprits in the New York Times and the CNN. Like the shithole thing, you must have seen YouTube things about the comment. CNN, something like 167 times said the word shithole, and they are just propagandists. It's so blatantly obvious. But that wall, that edifice is coming down again. That's crumbling. So what happened? The 2014 Empowerment Act came on, and in May of 2015, this is significant, and this came again through the source on crowdsourced the truth. The actual act came into power in December 2014, but it was ratified in May of 2015. Funny coincidence then, June of 2015, 45, Donald J. Trump announced his running for the presidency. 1 month after the act was ratified. In essence, they were all part of the A-team, who are these guys here. Trey Gowdy, Jason Chaffetz, Jordan, Isa, among a few other congressmen and people that were part of an elite group. I call them the A-team, that's why they're elite. But essentially Michael Horowitz got these guys on board, and these guys started asking direct questions and bringing in prosecutions and reopening the cases against Hillary. So what happened when Trump was elected? These prosecutions were going to go ahead. Had Hillary got in, she would have been dogged and plagued by these allegations and these prosecutions coming on. Essentially, it could have terminated her presidency. Her presidency would have been dogged by these things, and I truly believe she would have escalated to war. She was goading. They were war hawking for Russia. Her administration, her guys would have pushed for World War III. Essentially, the wars were missed by this woman not getting elected. So Trump was the final flush. What in essence happened? They had the royal flush. They had the House, the Congress, the Senate, and the executive branch. Now that the Trump is going to enforce the full measure of law, by all means, that brings us up to 2016's. During the presidential campaign, another significant thing that happened was the Office of Inspector General was given a seat at the table of the National Security Council. So when it gained its powers back in 2014 through the Empowerment Act, and after it's been ratified and put into place, another significant hero of the time, and I think needs a mention in dispatches, is NSA Director Admiral M. Rogers, who went to the Trump campaign office unbeknownst and unannounced and expressed to them that their offices were being monitored, and that they shouldn't conduct their campaign management from the Trump Towers. If you look into it, he moved his whole campaign headquarters to New Jersey following that meeting. So the OIG gets a seat on the National Security Council. Then there was not prosecutions, the hearings of record, which were given no media attention. I covered these. I remember watching Trey Gowdy pulling civil servants apart left, right and centre. And Comey and all came before Chavez, had Loretta Lynch. They said that they couldn't answer some questions, which is ironic. They couldn't answer some questions because of an ongoing investigation, and we had probably assumed that it was the Uranium One investigation or the dossier, the Steele dossier, which is now coming out and being prosecuted. These hearings of record, the guys made out their statements, but essentially they thought that we were thought they were obfuscating and pleading fifth and weren't speaking, and they came across as corrupt and incompetent. But in essence, what was happening was they were being recorded, so they were in fear of jeopardy. They knew there was an impending investigation. We all presumed it was Uranium One. It wasn't. It was the OIG was conducting its investigations, and they could not mention or say anything because they would incriminate themselves. Again, there was no media coverage whatsoever. These were all on YouTube. Follow them. They were fascinating. And then the new investigations have been opened, pending on these FISA abuses. This is where the OIG reports they have the evidence that the FISA was abused, and essentially all evidence therefore after that was included is part of the poison tree, as Lionel Nation puts it. Any evidence stemming from this hereafter is null and void, because this evidence, the FISA abuse warrants was gained under false pretenses. So everything thereafter is null and void, and it leaves these guys open to the prosecution. Lynch is Loretta Lynch. She was Obama's Adjutant General. Comey was obviously the head of the FBI. He refused to prosecute Hillary. These kind of worms are being reopened. A guy called Christopher Wray, I don't know if he's an Obama appointee, but he coined the phrase, "We're going to unring the bell." Essentially, these cases being reopened, and these cases are going forward. What's going to be investigated? The Clinton Foundation. Boom! Huge thing. That's going to tie into what David Seaman was talking about, which I mentioned him earlier on. Newsweek's head office got raided in America. Something like 26 federal officers went in and raided the offices. That news there is significant because that's going to tie in with the first of these, the Clinton Foundation, which will lead on to Haiti. That's another discussion and another topic which I'm sure most people are very well aware of. But let's look at the prosecutions again. The email scandal, the private servers. These servers were destroyed and dismantled. They should never have been in place. There was a private communications between Hillary and Obama and all the main players, Rice, Lynch, and these will all be shown to have colluded to subvert the duly elected presidency of Donald J. Trump. This is seditious and treason. There's loads of stuff going on over in the States. Back again to Newsweek and what that entails. Look who owns Newsweek, Reuters and Associated Press. Find out who owns them. That will lead you to a few breadcrumbs there. I'll throw a breadcrumb in the description box there as well. And another breadcrumb for here in Ireland. There seems to be a transfer of wealth out of some certain countries and coming back into this Irish jurisdiction. I'm keeping an eye on that, and that probably will be something to look in for, maybe a video coming forward on that as well. So to wrap up, where do we go? What you need to look out for is this government website. It's called oversight.gov. This is where the records of the prosecutions will be launched or set out. They are actually being debated now behind closed doors, so that the information can be correlated between the things, and what can be released to the public can be made known. This will come in the next couple of days. I'm keeping an eye out on that side, and then we will see what the actual prosecutions will be and what the charges will be. Huge things. Also, Benghazi made a special note of that. I think she's going to get prosecuted for the Benghazi fiasco when the ambassador Stevens was murdered and 4 soldiers were left behind. On what difference does it make? I'd also like you to direct your attention to go back to Muammar Gaddafi and look at before he became friends with the Americans and the stuff that he said on the Arab Council elections. He warned not to trust the Americans, and it served him well. Well, it didn't serve him well at all. He got killed, as you well know. Just going to wrap up again. I'll link the links for the YouTube videos. I'd like to thank Jason Bateman, and I'd encourage you to donate any any donations you can, because there's a fantastic news source, especially about what's going on over there. It's actually a whole setup there that I'm very envious of, and look towards trying to incorporate that kind of level of professionalism as it goes forward. And who knows where it sees. So again, I'll probably see on the hour exit a few more of these things coming. I hope that kind of condensed into what's going on. But the prosecutions have been going on since 2012. This guy, Michael Horowitz, is an American goddamn hero. This was the royal flush disappointment. They never expected him to win. They never expected her to lose. The whole corrupt pile is going to fall down in front of their faces. Thanks very much, guys. Oos!